A career night from Myles Turner and a spirited comeback attempt from the Indiana Pacers. Not enough in their first game back from the All-Star break as they fall to the Boston Celtics. No moral victories, but this is as close as you can get if you're the Pacers at this point in the season. We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, diving in to the Pacers' first game back from the All-Star break, hosting the Celtics, looking miserable at first, and then really good, and then in overtime. And that doesn't really tell the story of this game that well. The Pacers played well. They did a lot of good adjusting, and Myles Turner was fantastic. A career night for Myles Turner. Unforgettable punishing of the Celtics defense. Talk about the Pacers game in general. Myles Turner's brilliant night and what went into it, and if it's repeatable, and rebounding. Again, somehow it becomes a topic for the Pacers every single game, it feels like. In this one, it was nonetheless a thing again, but this one was interesting because early, the Pacers had a fine first quarter. They were in it, but at halftime, they were down by 10. And when you're playing against a team like Boston, who's so good, top of the East, top of the league, actually, a team that is really playing good basketball recently, you think, oh, you're down 10 at halftime. That's tough to overcome. It's going to be hard for this Pacers team who isn't in a rhythm. They haven't played in 9 days. But the Pacers really up to the physicality in the second half. I think that's something that they've come back a lot recently. Their slow starts have been a problem, but they've been a really good adjustments team, but a lot of it's been something schematic, a player stepping up, an energy level boost. In this game, they went the route of making it chippier and more physical. And I think that's interesting, especially when you're clearly the smaller team, right? Going against Horford and Rob Williams on that Celtics team, and Hauser and Cornette, they're just bigger than the Pacers, Grant Williams. And the Pacers said, screw it, let's be physical. Let's make this a game. And I thought it was interesting, hearing Carlisle talk about it after the game. He said that he would tell his team every single timeout, the defining plays in this game are going to be physical plays. And he encouraged them to be more physical and play like that. And there were moments where, Tyrese Haliburton and Marcus Smart get into it. I still don't really know what ignited that. Haliburton said it was nothing after the game. Marcus Smart got a tech like 1 minute later, but, Haliburton added some spirit in that moment. And if you're someone else on the team and you see, this was in the middle of the third quarter, Pacers are on their biggest run of the game. They're ahead at times in that quarter. If you see Haliburton, your leader, your all-star, playing like that, you're going to play like that. Another play like that, I can't remember if this was mid or early fourth quarter, a jump ball between Benedict Mathurin and Jason Tatum. And the ref's telling them to let go of the ball. It's a jump. They already called it. Neither of them will let go, right? Everybody's standing around them, seeing what will happen. And, if you're 20-year-old Benedict Mathurin, who, by the way, played a fantastic two-way game, despite not having the stats to show it. He was really great on defense this night, 4 assists for him as well, which is pretty good for his skill set. Those kind of moments really energize a whole team. And that was huge for the Pacers in the second half. They're down 16 in the second quarter at one point, and they slowly but surely kind of clawed their way back into this game. And I think that physicality and chippiness really helped them when they were able to play their style in the third and fourth quarter. They were still spraying it out for threes. They had a bunch of threes in the second half. They were close to a franchise record in made threes, finishing with 22. Haliburton was hitting them. Buddy Hield was hitting them. Mathurin was hitting them. Myles Turner was hitting all of the ones that he took, right? They were generating and hitting a lot of threes, and the chippiness and energy were there to make that happen. And so in the third quarter, after the Pacers were down 10 at halftime, the Pacers were fantastic on offense. That was their key turnaround that got them back in the game. They could not miss from three in that quarter. I think they made 8 in the third quarter alone. And so they gave up 31, but they scored 39 in that frame to slowly get a little more into it. And then in the fourth, that wouldn't work again, right? The Celtics are a brilliant adjusting team. They switch well on defense. Joe Mazzulla is a great coach. They have lineups to contain anything. So the Pacers had to defend well, and they did it. They only gave up 25 in that quarter, right? That's a good way to come back against a team that is brilliant on the offensive end of the floor most nights in Boston. And so they did it. And the chippiness and the physicality was a big part of why. They kept the Celtics off their game. They prevented the drives. They stopped the Stars for a brief moment from having a big quarter, right? Tatum goes 9 for 25 in this game. Brown goes 11 for 24. They did a good job slowing those guys in key moments. Now, there were a couple key moments in the fourth quarter that really hurt the Pacers in the end, and a lot of them came in the final minutes as the team was trying to put away the game. And I am usually almost always, I would say, more sympathetic to the strategy the Pacers actually executed in the final minutes of this game than the common person. So this game was 125 with 1 minute and 41 seconds to go. Over 100 seconds to go after Tyrese Haliburton hit a free throw to tie the game at 125. Now, spoiler alert, that is the same score that this game went to overtime at, was 125 to 125. So neither team scored for the final 101 seconds. And the Pacers will beat themselves up over this after losing in overtime. But both teams had, a similar number of possessions. And on one of the Pacers' possessions, the Hield misses a step back jumper, but Benedict Mathurin gets the rebound. He misses a tip layup. And then Tyrese Haliburton on the next possession, after, kind of a lot of handling, takes a step back three. He missed that one. And then they get the ball back again after a Celtics turnover. And then another possession with few passes. Tyrese Haliburton misses a pull-up three at the buzzer. He kind of mishandled it, so it's a tougher shot there at the end. And I saw a lot of questions about, the Pacers had a lot of momentum at this stage. That's why Carlisle didn't want to call timeout. I don't care about that. They had a lot of time to do what they wanted to do, and they don't call a lot of plays. Whatever. That's not why they didn't score. A lot of people were talking about those possessions and it being isolation and things like that. At the end of games, teams don't pass, and I usually think that's smart because a turnover is just devastating, right? Any fast break for the team, an easy opportunity to score in a tie game is killer, right? And the Celtics turned it over twice. That's why the Pacers had two chances to win it. Tatum had a turnover with 50 seconds to go, and then Jaylen Brown in transition. This looked like it could have been the Celtics putting the game away in regulation. Jaylen Brown in transition has Al Horford cutting, and he threw it out of bounds for another turnover on a pass. If he had just taken it to the rim, even if it's contested, that's better than what happened there. I am usually, especially if a guy like Tyrese Haliburton, who's been special in the clutch so often this season, I'm usually in favor of teams not passing late in games and letting their superstar make it happen. Tyrese Haliburton did not make it happen in those instances. He said after the game, "That's on me. I should have gotten us a better look." And he liked his shot over Al Horford. He didn't, he again fumbled the ball. He didn't like another one he took over Smart, but again, he's earned the right to take those shots. I think that I personally think that was fine, but obviously the results say you should do something different. And Carlisle talked about, he said, "I've got to do a better job of creating better situations for Ty, whether that's bringing a screener or even a fake ghost screen or having a different lineup out there." But you're never going to call timeout in that situation unless your star says that you need to. And Rick also said sometimes the best thing is just to get out of his way, right? Let Tyrese Haliburton handle it. So they did not score. They go to overtime, and then the physical, chippy nature of this game bit them in the butt because the game slowed down a little in overtime, and that favors the Celtics, who are much better as a half-court team than the Pacers are. And the Pacers actually did pretty well, I think, in overtime. They scored 13 points. Like, their offense was good. And when I say pretty well in overtime, I mean offensively. Myles Turner scored. The Pacers scored on like 5 of their first 6 possessions. They were getting to the foul line. This game was tied with 1:16 to go in OT. But again, they couldn't score the rest of the way. Nesmith missed a decent look at a 3, and then Haliburton missed a pull-up 3 late in this one, and the Pacers lose. The Celtics scored what felt like every possession in overtime, and that was the difference, right? Their half-court offense was really, really good in this game when it mattered. Their stars were brilliant in key moments in this game, and the Pacers just could not get enough stops to get it done. And, of course, fittingly, at the end, a 2-point game, 140 to 136. Jason Tatum airballs a 3 after 19 seconds of playing on a possession. And there's one of those weird shots where the guy under the basket, which was Marcus Smart in this case, could tell it was an air ball, but no one else could. So a lot of Pacers were like in kind of good rebound position, but it just kind of fell into Smart's hands. But then no one realized the shot clock reset, so they kind of sagged off of Marcus Smart, and he just threw it up at the rim, and it hit the rim, and Jason Tatum soared in for the rebound. The Smart offensive rebound, whatever, it's awkward. The Tatum one was terrible. Pacers offensive rebounds bite them in the butt again. Tatum tip layup, game's over with 10 seconds to go. So the Pacers did a lot of things well in this game. They generated good threes to make the spirited comeback in the third quarter. They defended well in the fourth. They found a way to make Myles Turner thrive. He had 40 points. We'll talk about that a ton in the second segment. They found the new chippy physical style, playoff style that made this game fantastic. It was one of the most fun games to watch of the entire season. They did so many things well. And even Myles Turner said after the game, look, none of these guys are moral victory guys on this Pacers team. Turner said, "We don't want any pity, but I think we're taking a step in the right direction." Right? The Pacers did a ton of things well to play well in this game, but they didn't quite get it done. And they fall. They're now 26-35 with the Magic on Saturday. But Myles Turner was special in this game. Let's talk about how 40 points for Myles Turner, 4-0. We'll have a stat, too, about why this is one of the best games ever for him and from an efficiency perspective. Before we do that, though, let me talk to you guys about BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up the way that you want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you, and therapy can help with that. For example, it's helpful for learning positive coping skills or setting boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for people who have, for example, experienced major trauma. It can be for everyone. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, jump on over to, of course, Locked On Celtics. Here, John Corrales break down the flip side of this game and Malcolm Brogdon's return to Indy. I have a story on that up on SI Pacers as well. Talked to him at shoot-around in the morning before the game. Fun to see him back in Indy for the first time since the trade. But let's talk about a guy who's been with Indy for a long time, and that's Myles Turner, who just played perhaps the best game of his entire career. He's had a couple other fantastic scoring games mixed in with great defense. He's had some clutch performances. So maybe I'm rushing to say best game of his entire career, but it's certainly up there because Myles Turner had 40 points. 4-0. For the second time of his career, he reached the 40 mark. And it wasn't just that he scored 40. I mean, 40 is obviously huge. He was a +9. That was one of the best digits on the Pacers. In fact, it was the number one best digit on the Pacers. He was huge every time he was in the game. Good things happened to the Pacers. It was also a historically efficient game for Myles Turner. Shout out to Shane Young, friend of the pod, who tweeted after this game, Myles Turner just had the most efficient 40-plus point game in NBA history. Let me repeat that. Myles Turner had the most efficient 40-plus point game in NBA history. 40 points on 110.6% true shooting, 5 for 5 from two-point range, 8 of 10 from three-point range, 6 out of 7 from the foul line. 8 threes for Turner, also a career high. And that's what this game was to me. Look, many things happen. When you hit 8 threes, your stat line's going to look fantastic. Credit to Myles Turner for hitting those 8 threes. In fact, Jaylen Brown, after the game, I asked Jaylen Brown, I said, hey, what did Myles Turner do that was troubling for you guys? Why couldn't you slow him down? He said, well, really, our game plan at first was to leave him open, to cut off other stuff. And he made us pay. He kept making them. And Scott Agnes on the Pacers beat asked Myles. It didn't feel like they, were you surprised by the way they covered you? And Myles was like, a little bit. I kept making them and they kept sagging off of me. And all the credit to Turner for punishing that, right? The Celtics game plan was, let's let Turner make Turner beat us. And he did. He absolutely beat them over and over and over again. He was amazing in the third quarter of this game. Single-handedly tipped the balance back into the Pacers' favor with his shooting, with his offensive weaponry, and all of that sort of thing. He was awesome. This merits a full story. It's one of his best career games. What this game was about to me was more than just, holy crap, Myles Turner just had 40 points and made 8 threes. Of course, that's huge, and we'll talk more about that. But this game was kind of the encapsulation of Myles Turner's growth over this entire season. That's kind of what I wanted to ask him about, is like, you have shown so much this season to allow games like this to be possible. Like, what does this mean to you in terms of your offensive growth? Because the big thing for him that he's always said is he feels like he can do more. He feels like he has potential that he hasn't gotten to tap into, that he can do all of these things, but being on this team in a front court situation that required him to play on the perimeter, he played on the perimeter, and that got him this 3-and-D label. And I think that was accurate for the way he played for years and years, but he always said he could do more. And he's showing it this year. And I've always said that that's been very impressive to me. But this game was sort of the encapsulation of that, where after the game, when I asked him about his offensive growth, he talked about being a 3-level score, right? This season from 0 to 3 feet, 77%, 7% above his season average. Fantastic. From 3 to 10 feet, 49%, a full percent above his season average. 50% from 10 to 16 feet, 5% above his season average. And of course, entering this game, 38% from 3. That number is certainly higher now. That is 3% math above his season average. Myles Turner is mixing up his shot diet. I think that has been a big thing for his growth this year. He's shooting over 30% of his shots at the rim for the first time ever in his entire career. He's also taking more from 3 to 10 feet as he's added in a little bit of a safe mid-range game. None of the bad mid-rangers, none of those long twos he took when he was younger in the league. Good quality, high quality. He's making 50% of them, kind of these mid-range turnaround shots. And he's finishing well at the rim, and he's hitting the threes. He said the phrase 3-level score after the game. The stats say he's absolutely right. He has been 2.5 levels, I guess. Not like, a 15 to 20 foot weapon, but still, he can score from anywhere. And that makes him so tough to cover. And that, yes, he was hitting 8 threes in this game. That's going to give you an insane stat line when you hit a career high from deep anytime you do it, right? But he didn't just do that. He got to the line 7 times because the Celtics couldn't just leave him alone in the post, right? He had a huge bucket to tie the game up late on a post up, right? He had a switch with a small. They threw it into him. He did a little, I don't know what to call the one-legged fadeaway, because saying the Dirk fadeaway, it's kind of looked like that, but that is a disservice to Dirk. But it was like that, and he drilled it, and it was a huge clutch shot. He scored in the post. He punished smalls in the post. The Celtics switched a lot. Myles Turner said, no problem, I can score on you. He hit those in the little mid-post kind of shots, and he hit the threes, but he also got to the line, right? He would get in deep, and he would draw the foul with a powerful move, no matter who was on him in this game, right? This is sort of the growth that he said he could do, and he's doing it, right? He can set a screen and read the defense and say, I can cut to the basket on this one. I can dive to the rim and create a problem for their team. Oh, they immediately switched. I'm going to post up this guy. Oh, they're sagging down because I just rolled to the basket and drew a foul. I'm going to take one step behind the 3-point line, a shot that this team is willingly giving me, and I'm going to score and hit 3, right? Like, that is such a weapon, and that's why he's been so much better this year. It's not just that teams have to give some sort of trade-off, and Myles Turner is punishing them for it. It's that he's able to do so many things that a defense has to make a choice, and he's done a good job of being ready to make decisions on what choice to make, actually finishing the plays. This game, it was hitting the threes, but also making moves in the post, and improving in a way that's allowed him to step into that role and succeed. And he destroyed the Celtics in this game. When he was in there, they tried everybody on, right? They had no answers. They tried Rob Williams to start overtime, for example, because he's probably their best defensive big, and he can kind of roam if he's not on Turner and stop other stuff. Myles Turner was so threatening that didn't work. And on the other end, Myles Turner could just ignore Robert Williams and play better defense. Myles Turner played a good defensive game as well. So then they tried Al Horford, but Myles Turner was a little faster than him in this game and could score in the post on a switch, because Al Horford switches a little more than Robert Williams does, right? So all sorts of matchup issues he was causing that forced the Celtics to switch bigs or switch schemes defensively. He made them pay every step of the way. He played a great defensive game. He finishes with 40 points, 4-0, tying his career high from that 40-point game he had in Washington early last season. 10 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. Fantastic performance from Myles Turner. A career night. Had they won, that would have been easily the lead of this podcast, and my lead story is how fantastic he played in guiding the team to almost a win, getting them to overtime against one of the premier teams in the NBA. He was absolutely fantastic. He did so many things well. He showed what he can be at his absolute best. Can he be this guy every night? Absolutely not. Career high from 3 is not ever going to be the expectation for any player, but the varied nature of his game is what I think allowed this game to happen, and what is repeatable, the fact that he can make those decisions every single game, and he has been all season, right? He can decide to roll, to pop, to punish, a switch on any given possession, and that's been absolutely huge for him and his growth and his ability to make the Pacers better this season. He did it all in this game. Brilliant performance. It was fantastic to watch, and it was a huge part of the Pacers' comeback in the third and fourth quarters of this game. Fantastic Myles Turner game, and one that will be pointed to when I discuss his growth this season in the future. One thing the Pacers did not do well in this game, though, rebound. Myles Turner talked about it after the game. Also, Malcolm Brogdon's return was fascinating. Brogdon tore up the Pacers in this game. I want to talk about both of those things to close out today's show. Before that happens, though, got to give the Nissan Most Electric Player of the Week award. And who else could it be but Myles Turner? The Pacers have only played one game this week, and Myles Turner was far and away their best player. And the Nissan Aria, the all-new electric 2023 Nissan Aria, to be more specific, is an electric, brilliantly fierce vehicle designed by Nissan. And that is how I would describe Myles Turner's performance in this game. He was electric in igniting the Pacers' comeback in the third quarter. He was hype. He was doing that thing where he waves his arms around and puts up three fingers after he makes threes and is just such a force on the game. And it changed everything for the Pacers in this one. He deserves to be the player of the week. And he was fiercely elegant, stunningly powerful, elegant, and delivered on duality, just like the 2023 Nissan Aria. It has a combination of fierceness and elegance. It's beautiful but strong. The perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Nissan Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence in one electric vehicle. The all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria, the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Check out Locked On Sixers next with Keith Pompey, because the Sixers-Grizzlies game was bananas. There was a lot of awesome NBA action tonight as the league returned from the All-Star break. And man, did the NBA need a good night after the stinker of an All-Star game that we got this Sunday. So, Pacers lost this game. There was a lot of things they did wrong, right? They were down 16 in the first half at times. They were down 10 at halftime. Jason Tatum had 31 and 12. Jaylen Brown had 30 and 11. The Celtics were just bigger than them. And that's a big part of what I'm about to talk about is that size difference. But a big stat difference in this game between the teams was offensive rebounds, right? 22 to 18 in threes in favor of the Pacers. Okay, that's a helpful difference, but the Celtics made 4 more free throws and in general made 2 more shots from the field. They made 6 more twos. The turnover battle was close, 15 to 14, right? The steals battle was pretty close. The assist battle was close. The block battle was close. A lot of stats you typically point to in a lopsided game were close. The only stat with a big difference in this game was offensive rebounds. Defensive rebounds, Celtics have 31. Pacers had 27, right? Very close. Offensive rebounds, Pacers had 10, which for them is actually a pretty good game. Tice with 3, Turner with 3, Mathurin, who again was really good in this game with 3. The Celtics had 20. This has been the Pacers' biggest problem this season so often. They suck on the defensive glass, and some of it is schematic, and some of it is they're a bad defensive team in general, and some of it is that they're small. And in this game, it was all those at the same time. 20 offensive rebounds will just never cut it, right? That's just going to make it impossible to win. They actually gave up 25 offensive rebounds to Boston in Boston earlier this season. They actually won that game, which is crazy to think about. But, their 4 most offensive rebounds allowed in a game this season. They have now lost, their 5 most offensive rebounds allowed in a game this season. They have now lost 4 of those games. They only have 6 wins all season when they give up more than 13 offensive rebounds to their opponent. They just have to be better at keeping the other team off the offensive glass, giving them extra possessions, giving them extra chances. It kills them all the time. And it did again in this game. And something that Jason Tatum and Brown, who did podium for the Celtics, talked about after this game was like, I think it was Jaylen Brown who said it this way. He said, we're just bigger than them. They play small outside of Turner. And, when Tice was in there, they play smaller. So it's easier for us to get these rebounds, right? If you crash the glass, you might have a size advantage. And I think that is part of it. And that is the easiest part to point to if you watch the Pacers a lot is, they're smaller, right? That is a clear disadvantage for them in starting 3 guards and a smaller wing and Nesmith and a center. Is they just typically have a matchup out there where they have a significant size advantage, but especially against a Celtics team that has, Tatum, Horford, Brown, Smart, Williams, all starting all big at their position. Brogdon is a 6'5" point guard. Hauser's tall. Kornet's tall. Williams is a bully. Like, they have a ton of good players for the situation. But Brown had 5 offensive rebounds. He was their leader because he was typically 3-4 inches taller than his matchup. That is part of this, right? And that is sort of a Pacers roster deficiency. That's sort of the choice they have to make with the team that they have. But that's not everything that rebounding is. Rebounding is more than just you're shorter than the guy. You don't get it. They have. I've beaten this horse to death, so I don't want to discuss it too much again. It's after the All-Star break. This is a huge thing the Pacers have to improve on. 100% biggest thing they need to improve, honestly, I think. by the end of the year is defensive rebounding in terms of technique and strategy, and they like to run in transition, right? They leak out sometimes, and that's fine. It's part of their identity. It's part of what makes them such a threatening offense. But if that trade-off means you're going to lose games because of the other team's offensive glass, it's not worth it. You have to find a better balance. And if you go too far away from your identity, you'll just be worse, right? So they have to be careful with something like that. But I think they could do with a little bit of pendulum swing more towards the glass, whether that's boxing out, whether that's just sending more guys, whatever it is, because they're going to continue to have this size deficiency going forward. And a lot of people say, just play another big. And first of all, they should be playing another big for different reasons, that being youth. But okay, if you play two bigs at once, you've now Isaiah Jackson can run in transition, but you've now sacrificed a lot of the transition opportunities. You don't have as much speed or spacing in transition. They can get lineups with the speed if they go Jackson Turner, but then they lose a lot of shooting. So it's really hard to do everything you want to do without making a significant trade-off there. But I do think they need to swing the pendulum back a little bit more towards a focus of defensive rebounding in some way, shape, or form, because the Celtics, even in a game that was physical, and I think the Pacers did a good job playing physical, they still got bullied on the glass, right, in the game, and their size disadvantage really hurt them. Jalen Smith always talks about knowing opponent tendencies on the glass, and that is true, but I think that's more important for bigs than smalls. Either way, everybody has to get better on the defensive glass for the Pacers. And obviously there's always the finger always gets pointed at centers in games like this, and rightfully so sometimes. But Rob Williams was not the killer offensive rebounder for the Celtics. He did have 3, but it was guards, right? Jaylen Brown's 5, Tatum's 3. Those were huge, right? That's almost the Pacers' whole total. Smart, Tatum, and Brown had as many offensive rebounds as the Pacers. It's just as much on the guards as it is the bigs. Not that the bigs aren't a problem here, but everybody has to rebound better. It was Smart and Tatum making the biggest offensive rebounds of the game for the Celtics, and that completely changed the game. Pacers have to be better rebounding, or they'll never win games like this. The Celtics just get more chances to win the game, right? Even in a game where the turnover battle is nearly identical and the free throw battle is close, the Celtics take 5 more shots in a 4-point win. Those extra possessions mattered a ton, and it was huge for them in this game. So rebounding, big focus for the Pacers down the stretch of the season. Last thing to note here late in the show, Malcolm Brogdon returned. I thought it was cool. A little bit buried in the storylines of the post-All-Star break timing of the season. And Brogdon was never an All-Star with the Pacers, only was in Indiana for 3 years. But he was really good. He was a 20 points per game scorer for a full season. Rick Carlisle, before the game, talking about Brogdon, put him in there in the same air and breath that with Jimmy Butler and Drew Holiday, in terms of guys who can kind of do it all when they're in the game, right? That is something significant about him, that Rick Carlisle was very fond of his skill set. The exact quote was, "I think Malcolm was a tremendous player. To me, he's one of a very small group of guys in this league that can do just about anything on a basketball court." I always was very high on his skill set. When he actually played, that was the issue with the Pacers, is a lot of injuries, but he could pass, score, shoot well when he was in the right role, and defend because of his size. He was a good player, and it was fun to see him back. And he had recalled his time in Indiana fondly in terms of the charity work he did and playing for and with the franchise for 3 years. That team had much higher aspirations than they ended up reaching for many reasons. But it was fun to see him again and see what he could do. And he got a nice little welcome back from the public address announcer before the game, waved to the crowd, which was cool to see. Had a nice moment when he was at the scores table about to check in for the first time, where he gave Rick Carlisle a big high five and a nice little embrace before he came into the game. And he meant a lot to this franchise. He was a good player for this team at a time when it looked like they were going to be growing into kind of a contender type team, right? They were the 4th seed the first year they had him. If Sabonis is healthy in the bubble, who knows how that team looks? And Brogdon's the point guard for that squad. Him and Depot played well together in their time on the floor. The problem was that team never clicked. It never got the chemistry it needed to, and injuries were a big part of why. And Brogdon, of course, was injured all the time, and he never got quite to being good enough of a rim finisher to be the permanent full-time bullhorn, hand this guy the ball at point guard all the time player. But he was still good, and it was fun to see him back and see him share a few moments with his former teammates and coaches, because he was a good player for this franchise for a couple years. But it was best for both parties to move on, and they have. He's doing great with the Celtics. He's probably going to win 6th Man of the Year. The Pacers are obviously very happy with where they are in a rebuild, and that's that. That is now the return of every big key player from the last era of the Pacers checked off. Next game for the Pacers, the Magic on Saturday. Ironic timing. Going against Goga Batadze for the first time. Who knows if Goga will even play. Pacers looking for their first road win of the calendar year. We'll, of course, be covering all that coming on this show, on this exact podcast on Monday. We'll talk about what happened in that game, other storylines to monitor for this Pacers team heading into next week. You won't want to miss it, but thank you guys a ton for listening today. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you on Monday.